What used to be the American dream becomes a global dream for everybody. AI is affecting everything. I've been in Silicon Valley now for maybe 40 years. Everything seems to be deep tech, and everything is not deep tech.
Today I'm joined by Steve Ciesinski. He's a professor at Stanford, an investor and also an advisor to startups across Silicon Valley. In this episode, he shares how he thinks Morocco and Africa can build a strong tech ecosystem and what it really takes to launch a successful deep tech startup.
Even if you are successful as a startup, you can fail. You can have different jobs. You can try anything. You could try to change the world.
We recorded this episode during the DeepTech Summit organized by UM6P in Belgrade. It was a fascinating experience. I had the chance to meet incredible entrepreneurs working on ambitious and high-impact projects. The event brought together founders, investors, scientists, and students to explore emerging scientific technologies and their real-world impact. This year's edition focused on AI and how it's shaping deep tech innovation with a focus on technologies rooted in Africa with potential for international deployment.
Steve Ciesinski, I'm very happy to have you as a guest on Next Wave podcast here in Belgrade.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. It's really an honor to be here, and I'm really enjoying myself, so I'll look forward to our conversation.
Yeah, me too. So, Steve, I'm very happy to have you as a guest, especially here. So we're in Belgrade during the DeepTech Summit organized by UM6P here at Belgrade. You're an executive, a leader. You're also an investor, professor at Stanford, and you're involved in tech, in deep tech, and also you teach about emerging markets. Can we start first? Can you maybe start by introducing yourself?
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to do that. I'm living in Silicon Valley. I've been in Silicon Valley now for maybe 40 years. It's been really an unbelievable experience for me to see how the valley has grown over that period of time. One of my first jobs there was being a general manager for, at the time, a very small company in one company in an industry called Applied Materials.
Okay.
Applied Materials made equipment. It was the first independent equipment manufacturer for the chip industry. So our customers were Texas Instruments, Fujitsu, Intel, and so on. Of course, we went through ups and downs, and the company came close to failing. And today it's worth $126 billion US, and has created a whole new industry. So when we talk about startups, it's a really, really interesting story about a startup that had a lot of persistence, a lot of great people working hard, and building a company that actually ended up being a huge, huge financial success, as well as a strategic and technical success. From there, after a few years, I was recruited to join another company called Octel Communications. Octel was really the first independent voicemail company, non-simultaneous conversation. So you would try to call me, I would not be there. Instead of reaching a receptionist, you would leave a detailed message on the computer. I could be anywhere in the world. I could call in from my messages, listen to your messages, and reply back to you, and we could keep talking non-simultaneously. That company became very popular. We took that company public.
Okay.
And created yet another, for me, it was another industry that was created because there are many other followers in that industry. And eventually it got acquired by Lucent Technologies and so on. From there, I continued my career and joined, I think maybe my most favorite company was a company called Resumex. Resumex was in the business of artificial intelligence, one of the first maybe the first artificial intelligence companies to match open job requisitions with CVs and bios, okay?
Yeah.
And resumes. So it was a key word search, phrase search.
With AI.
AI. The AI part, the digital part was digitizing. That was pretty easy. The hard part was matching, doing the matching and understanding where the matching was so that we could present the best candidates to the recruiting office. the recruiting office in many companies, like IBM and Cisco, which was two of our big customers, they had mounds and mounds of paper. But the paper, no one understood where the papers were, what resumes and so forth. This was a way of magically, for them, finding the best candidates that they could interview and quickly hire. So in effect, we helped Cisco build its entire company. That was really my most favorite company because of the AI aspects, and that's the first introduction for me for artificial intelligence, which today, of course, has gone completely crazy.
Completely crazy. Yes.
And then, of course, I worked for Early Bird Ventures, a venture capital firm in the Palo Alto office, and for a while ran that, and ran another company, and then eventually find my way to SRI, Stanford Research Institute, which was my last really official operating job. I was asked to open up the international and commercial sector for SRI. SRI is extremely famous. It's well known for very unusual but popular innovations,
like the computer mouse.
The computer mouse,
right? It's crazy.
The internet.
It's the internet.
Siri.
Okay.
Siri.
Internet, I didn't know. I heard about Siri.
Yeah. Now there were a lot of people who contributed to the internet. SRI was one of the major ones. Okay, the first node that received the message on the internet from UCLA. Okay, and Da Vinci, the intuitive surgical company that has surgery done by a robot from a distance away. Unbelievable company that's a public company now, worth tens of billions of dollars. So all these types of innovations have come out of SRI. It was a really great experience working with such outstanding researchers, I should say, and scientists who are creating, what now people call deep tech.
Right.
And getting that deep tech into the hands of businesses and consumers so that they can actually put those to great use.
Yes.
Siri was maybe the last big one. I mean, there's been several since. But Siri was the last big one that got acquired, of course, by Steve Jobs,
Jobs and Apple.
Last major acquisition. Along the way, I was married, and I have 2 wonderful sons. They're married. I have 2 grandkids, and I do a lot of work for not-for-profits like Yosemite. Do you know Yosemite National Park and the homeless shelters?
Conservation.
Yes, exactly. So that's my life.
Which is very interesting is that you saw the history of the valley from the chips to the beginning of tech to artificial intelligence to deep tech now. What were the big moments that shifted the industry there at the valley? What were maybe the 2 or 3 moments that you lived that were shifting this story?
Well, the chip industry was really a kind of a nascent industry. There were not that many chip manufacturers, and the people who were designing chips were also the people who were manufacturing the chips. Now, of course, things have changed quite a bit where you design, but the manufacturing may take somewhere else, and that sort of thing. Even the equipment, Intel and Texas Instruments were making their own equipment. That's why Applied Materials was so essential, such a strategic company to start and then actually flourish during these times. And then, of course, we got into the smaller computers. Digital Equipment Corporation was one. Digital was another. There's a bunch of different companies that started. But the real major, I think, move was the personal computer. When, of course, Microsoft came out with its laptop, and naturally Apple came out with its version as well, the Macintosh, and that led to a huge, I'd say, growth spurt, for Silicon Valley, because these things became so popular, and simultaneously software became very, very popular. Until that time, software was really more a business application situation. People would use mainframes and put in punch cards and so forth into these things a long time ago. But then when software became very popular, a lot of things started to change. While I was at Octel Communications, for example, when we first started, we were really a hardware company. by the time I finished 10 years later, we were a software company. We had completely transitioned our company, and we were using PCs as the bridge for the software to be used. So that was a major move that I thought.
That's very interesting because I feel like the Valley is always living in the future. Even at the time, the personal computer was a very new thing, and a lot of people thought that maybe everyone won't use a personal computer, but still, then it became something that everyone is using. Today,
Well, then of course the personal computer became very popular in education because wisely both Microsoft and Apple for sure wanted to get these computers into the schools so that the kids would start to learn on their computers, and when they grew up, then they also had a market for those. So that became very popular.
Yeah, as I said, we're at the DeepTech Summit, and you spoke a little bit about the deep tech, which is maybe this last shift and this new technologies that are at the forefront of science and tech. What's your definition of deep tech?
Okay, so people are using. Thank you for asking that question, by the way, Mohammed. It's people are using this this phrase very loosely these days. Everything seems to be deep tech, and everything is not deep tech. So the way I would say it is that the venture industry, new companies, were always in especially in Silicon Valley, were always tech ventures, and tech ventures meaning that the technology was relatively proven. It was out there. It was available for use, and so people would try to commercialize that technology in different ways, and but the science behind it was already complete, or pretty much complete, and the IP was pretty well known, and there were people who could work with that technology. Those are tech ventures, and those became very popular, of course, and led to the formation of Silicon Valley. But in the background was always the scientist and the researcher, whether they be at SRI or at Intel or at IBM, who has their own research organization, of course, or some of these companies. And what now has become deep tech is that with the advent of both the internet 25 years ago, it really became popular, and more recently the really surge in AI technology, people are realizing that AI can be a huge benefit in completely changing how businesses operate and how people work among each other. And so people are starting to try to push out this technology much earlier. And that means that in addition to the engineer and the commercialization expert and the marketing person, you need the scientist to be close by. The scientist can't be in the back room anymore. The scientist and the researcher and the technology are one and the same, and you're engineering while you're actually creating.
That's like the moment of the applied science.
Okay, there you are. Okay, so the scientist now becomes essential, and he's not, or she's not, building something for the future. The future is now, and let's take advantage of it, because AI will enable you to take advantage of that. And so now what we have are things like quantum technology, of course, quantum computing. We have nuclear fusion, which hopefully will be a very clean energy that people can take advantage of years in the future. It's not yet there, but people are pushing very hard to make that happen. You have astrophysics, you have space technology, you have oceanography, you have people who are trying to understand what's going on in our oceans, and you have robots and robot technology. And all of these are now really deep tech technologies, because they're all trying to really push the frontier.
Yeah. You're teaching a course at Stanford, at GSB, and this is the course that is creating and scaling startups in emerging markets. What's the difference between creating, launching, and developing a startup in a market such as the US and the Valley, and in emerging markets like here in Africa? Maybe in in the launching or the creating part first? What's the differences that you see?
Oh, what a great question. Well, so we did a study about 12 years ago. Stanford did it with an organization called Endeavor, with my company, SRI, at the time, and also Ernst & Young. We interviewed 1,000 entrepreneurs all over the world. And we said, what are the important aspects of a strong startup ecosystem? So with, of course, Silicon Valley being the gold standard. And we came up with 8 pillars. And the 8 pillars happen to be big market opportunity, capital to start up a company and to grow a company, different forms of capital, having the talent to work within an environment like a startup, which is 24/7 all the time, having a group of mentors, board members, advisors who could help out a young entrepreneur get started, form his company, and try to avoid the mistakes along the way. Being related to either one or a number of universities that does research, so you can pull technology out of there. Having training capability, and then having, of course, a culture that failure is okay, it's accepted, it happens. Pick yourself up. What did you learn from your failure? Start all over again. You're going to be a much better founder.
That's very interesting.
Now, those were the gold standards, and that's how Stanford, not just Stanford, where VC started with Hewlett and Packard back in 1946, but it's the way the whole valley has been operating. You can fail. You can have different jobs. You can try anything. You can try to change the world, which is the standard for Stanford University. And so people had big ideas, and they were funded by former executives who did well, Intel, all these other places, and things started to move along. So Silicon Valley's been around for a long, long time. But of course, we started this class because we saw more students come to my Stanford Business School, and they came from different countries, and they wanted to go off into these countries and start companies or become venture capitalists. But we knew that there was a big difference. One of the other pillars is government regulation. Well, in the U.S., government regulation is pretty predictable, pretty consistent. Some people like it, some people don't, but you can depend upon it. In other countries, that's not so irrational. Okay, you could have a change of the president, and you can have something change very rapidly. What you think you were doing right, you could be thrown in jail for. Okay, so it's not so good. And we started to write cases of famous entrepreneurs in different places of the world: Africa, Latin America, Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, the Mideast, other places like that, of these entrepreneurs and venture capitalists who are operating in these areas. And our students seem to like having those case studies, because most of the case studies are about Silicon Valley or Boston, okay, if you do these cases. And these students were not going to operate in those locations. So for starting up a company, many times you can't get even, at least it used to be, the startup money. Where is your startup money going to come from? So we would help our students try to figure that out while they were there, when they were going back to their home country. The market in their country was not going to be so large. So in a country like Chile, we had students from Santiago, Chile. Chile is 16 million people. The market's very tiny. No venture firm is going to support a company with a market only that size. So right from the start, you have to think about exporting. What are you going to export out of Chile? How are you going to make your company global? So you have to start thinking more long-term in a developing economy. In the U.S., you can take for granted that if you're successful in the starting of a company, then of course you'll get funded. You'll get capital. You won't have to worry about a Series A or a Series B or a Series C growth fund round. But in these other countries, you do. Here in Morocco, in many places in Africa, you do have to worry about getting funded, even if you are successful as a startup.
I have so many questions about this because you talked about
I figured you might.
Very interesting things. Maybe to start, you talked about the market in Africa and emerging markets. There's always for founders this question about markets. Should I start in only one market? Should I go to another one very quickly? Should I be a company that operates in several countries from the beginning? What's your advice for founders in Africa that live maybe in a smaller market in navigating this question early in the history of their startup?
Okay, so just a great question, and there are many answers to this question. So let me just give some examples, I guess. Let's just say that you have an app, you have an idea for an app, and it's a consumer type of app. And so you say, okay, I'm gonna start this in, let's just say, Latin America, and I'm gonna run the subscription model. So I'm gonna give it for free for quite a while, get people used to it, and then I'll start charging them money. So you start it, you're successful, and you start wanting to charge people money, and there's lots of resistance. And only then you figure out that people in Latin America are used to getting apps for free, and they don't like paying for apps. So now you've found success, product market fit. Okay, your product fits in this marketplace if it's free. If it's not free and you want to charge, you don't have product market fit, because part of product market fit is price. Is you can actually stay in business. Okay, so now the company, I'm not going to name the company. Now the company has to move to a country where they actually will pay for a subscription, which happens to be U.S., and that's a good thing, because there are a lot of Spanish-speaking people in the U.S. and they can change their product around a lot. But they should have recognized right from the beginning that different cultures around subscription, they have different mindsets about whether they should be paying or not. Okay, so that's just a simple example. Another example, though, is you mentioned like a healthcare company or a fintech company. Healthcare companies and fintech companies in particular, you have to worry about regulation. Fintech companies, for sure, you have regulation, okay, on the monetary side. And of course, healthcare companies, you have regulation on the healthcare side in government. Now, if you start in one country, you have to understand that maybe that country is not going to be such a huge market for you, and you're going to have to move. Where are you going to move to? You should be thinking about that before you start your company up, because what you don't want to do is have a company that's going along okay, and now you can't figure out how you can change things.
How you could scale.
Even when you move into a new country, then you're faced with a position. Should you involve the government from the beginning and ask them to help with this new healthcare product that you have? Maybe they resist. That's what you risk. In some countries, you say, I'm going to go for it, and I hope the government doesn't catch up with me until I've actually been successful, and then they can regulate me, but then I'll be successful then. So you have choices to make, right? And we talk about these choices. They're all legitimate choices, business choices, but the important thing is you should be aware of these things, okay? Similarly, you could have a successful story in one country, and you're profitable even, just a little bit, and now you want to expand, but there's no growth capital in these countries. It is very famous that Latin America and Africa in particular, Southeast Asia less so, these locations don't have a lot of growth capital funding. They have tiny VC and angel investors, if you know what I mean. But the growth capital is very, very thin. So where is your money going to come from? So again, you have to plan well in advance. Maybe you start developing relationships with the U.S. VCs early on before you need the money. Maybe you start a partnership with the U.S. company so that you have more credibility of what you're doing, and they can help you out along the way. Lots of different things you have to consider when you're starting up something in a very small country like Morocco, where if you're going to want to go global, you have to be thinking things out into the future.
There has been a big shift in tech and software. It's AI, and one of its impacts is that it seems like the cost of building great tech and great software is going down thanks to AI today. It's like technology is getting commoditized. Do you think that this shift and this impact of AI will help startups in emerging markets to build softwares that could go global with less funding? Do you think that it will have a good impact on these emerging markets? Because we can see it the other way around and say maybe not. Maybe the big AI companies will come from the developing markets. Maybe the US or France is also good in AI, and maybe we can see it the other way around. How do you feel about this question?
Okay, so another great question on this matter. It's as you say. I think it could. It could go both ways. It could go either way. This has a possibility of doing more leveling of the battlefield of the war in a competition among the companies that are trying to be successful, because you're right. Software, you could start to eliminate all the expense of building a software platform and so forth by using AI technology. You could actually do an awful lot of other functions within a company, the sales function, the accounts payable, accounts receivable, all these kinds of functions potentially have the ability to be completely changed around through AI, where you basically are asking the AI engine to create a specific application for my finance organization or for my HR organization. And you've eliminated all these SaaS products in the marketplace right now because you've just wiped them out. So that's very possible. However, you also have that's the building side, but understanding the markets and understanding who's going to be buying what in the future, that's a science that is has been well understood by more developed economies, the U.S. in principle, of course, but Western Europe, and they have really a pretty good idea of how to assess markets and so on. I don't have an appreciation for example, Africa, about the ability to assess global markets. And the reason is there haven't been that many successful global companies coming out of Africa that have expressed and shown that they really know how to do that. So if we eliminate the execution part, which is the manufacturing and the product development side and so forth, is there a capacity and a skill level existing here to assess what people globally need with their products and be able to create that? I don't know. Time will tell.
Yes. You also talked about culture, the fact that in the US and especially in the Valley, it's usual to try a lot of things. It's usual to do maybe even weird things because when you're at the frontier of technology and tech, sometimes you do weird things and then it becomes very usual. And you can also fail. You can try. How do you think we can create or develop this mindset in older countries and culture? And where does it come from in the Valley and in the US? This culture of trying and it's okay to fail.
When people are doing sport, for example, kids, they're playing football, they're skiing, they're playing baseball, they're running, whatever. They fail a lot, okay? And the coaches say, just get up and start doing this again, and let me show you how, and so on. And no one thinks that's how life is, okay? And somehow what's happened is when around the world, when people get a little bit older, kids get older, then it becomes shameful for somebody to fail. Yeah. In the Valley, that kid mentality of failing and then picking and then learning and continues till you're an adult. And I don't know why. It seems like it's okay. Some people, now I think it's gone a little bit too far when people say very proudly that I failed. Well, you shouldn't be proud that you're failing, okay? No one, your investors aren't so proud.
Went too far.
Yeah. You failed 3 times. Okay, well, you investors 3 times I'm not so happy, right? So good for you, but it took you a long time to figure that out. You know, you're a slow learner. So I mean, we obviously all like to be successful. The what you should do is self-analysis. If you failed, is take a few minutes or a few days or sometimes a few months and start to think about, okay, what happened wrong? What could I have done that would have been successful, or tried something different or whatever? Okay.
Maybe it comes from the children and the sport and from the beginning.
Yeah. So I think the way to do that successfully is to establish an ecosystem. And sometimes that includes a great university like UM6P that we're sitting here today, where they have enough people who have come from the Valley with that kind of mentality, that kind of culture, and then inculcate that culture into the university society. And as these kids are graduating into jobs and so forth, they have that already, and it starts to spread. It takes a while, though. You can't instantaneously say, okay, fail.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a few years. And it takes time. What also helps is in a way, the best thing that could happen here is somebody fails. Okay. And then they pick themselves up and they get some money and they start up another company, and that company becomes an unbelievable company. And now the founder is a real hero to the country. And the kids all want to become like that guy, that person. That's Steve Jobs, okay? Or the person who invented Skype in Estonia or wherever, okay? And so you then interview that person on this podcast, and you find out that this person has failed two times maybe, and until it's been successful. Then you get people saying, now I got the secret. Now I know what to do. You see what I'm saying?
Of course. I'm seeing this. You are the president of SRI. So it's one of the leading research and development institutions, as you said, involved in the development of the computer mouse, Siri,
Yep.
even internet, as you said. And so you were involved in innovating and building products through partnerships between research, startups, companies,
And VCs.
and investors. What did you learn about building great products and innovating through partnerships?
So the partnerships with large companies, and the partnerships with even small companies, and the partnerships with venture capital and investor types, angels as well, were extremely important. What we realized at SRI was that we have brilliant scientists, researchers, but they're not marketing experts. They're not sales experts. They're not market researchers. They're very, very good at what they do, which is to create unbelievable technology. And in many cases, they can prove that this technology, importantly, can scale. Because if it can only work once or something, then you don't have the technology for a big company. Okay? So what we have done is said, okay, we're good at this, but we have to supplement, we have to complement our skill sets in building great technology and science with other people, other organizations, individuals, partnerships with people who can help understand various markets and where this technology can be used. And when we see a potential like what Siri became, we brought in somebody, as not from SRI, from the outside, and who wanted to specifically find a technology like Siri so that he could build a company around Siri. So we're a matchmaker. And we brought that person in and we said, okay, you have 3 months, go out and do some market research and come back and tell us what's going on. And he comes back and it looks promising. We said, we have another 3 months. Let's see some more. And after another 3 months, we got convinced, because we have a committee, to say, okay, we're now going to take this project and make it into a company, which is an acid test. So we want you to start building with the team. You're going to have to bring some outside engineers in maybe, and you can go off and find venture money to support your company because we need to spin it out. We can't, SRI cannot afford to keep putting money into this little tiny company because we have other reasons that we need our money for. And that's how we spin out companies. And many of them get spun out that way and are supported by venture capitalists. And then they become independent companies. And SRI becomes named as the co-founder of those companies.
You're also an investor. You
And
invest in startups.
Yeah.
How do you choose these startups, and what do you look in founders that you meet before investing in their companies?
Well, we've learned we've gone through a cycle of different types of founders. People who have lots of experience, people who have no experience, people who come from universities, certain universities, no universities, people who have a lot of technical experience, people who have a lot of marketing experience, and so on. We do like to have someone who has been, especially if we're going to bring somebody in who will eventually be the CEO of the new co. I'll call it the new company. We like to have somebody who's already had a job like that before. We don't want to have to teach somebody how to be a CEO. That's a hard thing to do. We like somebody who knows how to build a team. Since the technology is pretty sound, we like somebody who is technically inclined, but we're not hiring that person to become the engineering manager. We're hiring that person to really be the person who can raise money from venture capitalists and who can really understand the marketplace. So those are some of the attributes that we're looking for. And then, of course, generically, we're looking for somebody with persistence, who is good under pressure, a lot of stress in companies, who are good at hiring and attracting individuals, senior management, to work in the company, and ideally the ability to scale a company, not just take it through the startup phase where you have product market fit and a few customers, but scale it up to a certain size.
Do you think that it requires very different skill sets between reaching product market fit and then scaling to the next level?
Boy, you have all the good questions. You know, sometimes when you hire somebody and recruit somebody as CEO, you just pretty much know that person is not going to be able to get it beyond product market fit. But I've been surprised many times because people really enjoy that job and they grow in the job, and pretty soon, okay, take it as far as you can take it. We don't want to bring in somebody, but sometimes when a company is growing, you're forced to bring in somebody experienced who knows how to go through a growth phase. And many of these people who are taking it, and they're so good at taking it to product market fit, they've never gone through a growth phase where 10 customers become 100, become 1,000. And now you have to support all of these customers. So you never know. You ideally, and you don't want to hire a growth person to be the startup person because that growth person wants to already hire lots of people, and the company doesn't have enough money to hire all the people, and you don't need to hire all those people anyway because you don't have any customers yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so the converse can be true as well.
Yeah, so going from 0 to 1 and from 1 to 10 requires different skill sets. But
Different skill set. It could be the same person.
Yes.
Who goes 0 to 1,
Would
1
go
to 10, 10 to 100. It could be.
Yeah. There's a shift in emerging markets in Africa. And I saw you writing or talking about this recently. It's the rise in the penetration of smartphones and internet. Internet through telcos, but also through technologies such as Starlink, the Elon Musk's company. What's the impact for emerging markets and startups of these higher penetration rates of this internet and smartphones?
Yeah, I think it's understated worldwide. I want you to think of yourself, if you can possibly put yourself in the position of somebody who does not have a phone at all, never mind a smartphone. That person is working on a day-to-day basis, maybe a day worker, maybe makes some money today, maybe not tomorrow, does not have any kind of banking relationship, no credit. Maybe that person gets married, and wants to have a family and a future and can't provide for that family and future, is working in the field as a farmer's aide, agricultural worker, or maybe in a little shop where he's doing some work, and has no, can you imagine a world where you look to the future and you're 30 years old, and for the next 40 years you're going to be doing the same thing?
Yeah.
It's a very depressing kind of thought, especially these days. So, and furthermore, you have no idea what's going on in the outside world anyway. Now along comes a technology called the internet, and you have the ability to understand what's going on. And if you spend some time training yourself, you could actually have access to the internet. Maybe it's in a library somewhere. Maybe it's in a free computer somewhere that you can use on a 1 hour a day basis or whatever. You start to get some ideas, and it opens up the world to you. But you still don't have any credit. But then somebody gives you a smartphone. I'll give you a smartphone, and you pay me. The smartphone costs $200. You pay me $20 a month for the next 10 months, and you own the smartphone. Okay? And I say, wow, I can now use a smartphone to build a business. I can run a business with a smartphone. I can buy some things. I can sell some things using my smartphone. I can build credit where a bank will actually have a banking relationship with me.
Through my smartphone.
Through my smartphone and just through my credit. And I can now enter the economic, social structure of the world.
It's true.
Because before, I was just getting paid peanuts. Okay? So what's happened, and this is true, there's a company I wrote a case on called PayJoy that does exactly what I just said.
Okay.
And they're a for-profit company doing extremely well. They were formed in San Francisco by GSB alumni, students, and they've built a worldwide company, and most of their market is in developing economies with this smartphone, okay? And they've done well, and they don't charge huge interest rates or anything like that by doing exactly what I just said. But the flip side is you now have a group of people out there who have moved up from the unbanked, unbanked, to the banked. And smartphone and the internet and other technologies have now allowed people to move through that to where you're in the low middle class and you have some discretionary income. You can buy clothes for your kids. You can actually maybe take out a small loan and buy a tiny little house. Maybe it only has 1 bedroom, but you can now provide for your family.
Yeah.
And you have a future that you can look forward to. I don't know how many billion people these changes have affected in the last 25 or 30 years since the internet has been around, since the mobile phone has been around, and since the smartphone is now, right? And you have the software that enables all of this now. And so now you have individuals, people, that's what poverty levels are coming down, is people are rising through the poverty level to where they actually have the ability to participate in an economic world and to become in the middle class, and maybe even more if they build a company, who knows what happens. So what used to be the American dream becomes a global dream for everybody.
That's true. What are the technologies or the companies that most excite you today, that you want to learn about, that you would like to invest in? Is it quantum? Is it AI? Is it something else? What are the current things that most interest you?
Well, it's interesting in that what you mentioned. So AI is at the top because AI is affecting everything. It's affecting all the things I talked about earlier: oceanography, aerospace, all of these, drug discovery, of course, absolutely, health, the ability to do personalized medicine, all sorts of different things. Artificial intelligence will help the ability to get to the result faster in all of those cases. Quantum, I'm fascinated with to see exactly what that's going to lead to. Right now, the use cases are thought about, but it's not yet in a production kind of mode where it can be used. I do like the idea. I think one of the most important areas is to have the ability to have free, clean energy. So, of course, there's sun power and there's wind power and there's wave power and a few others. But there is this novelty, which was a novelty, and now it's maybe becoming a reality, we hope, which is called nuclear fusion, not nuclear fission. Fission part is the bomb part. The fusion part is the ability for nuclei to be fused. That's what it means, of course. And by doing that, you're actually creating energy. So you're putting some power in to be able to make that happen, but the power out is 10 times greater or something, 20 times greater. In which case you now have the access, the world has access to energy that is far cheaper than everything used to be. And what's also good is you don't have to keep going after all the scarce resources that we have in the ground to be able to keep the world running on fuel, using oil and other of our scarce resources in the world.
Who's the best founder you ever met? Or entrepreneur?
Well, I met Steve Jobs once. He was a pretty interesting founder. He bought one of our companies, of course, and also leveraged the computer mouse. So he got a double dip into SRI. No one's ever asked me that question. I should mention the company that I worked for called Oxel Communications had two excellent founders, Bob Cohn and Peter Olson. And they were really, really good at understanding how to start up a company and how to build a company. But there have been fantastic founders. Larry Ellison at Oracle has been, fantastic. The fellow who's, at Salesforce.com, Mark Benioff, is a fantastic founder. Many, many, unbelievable founders.
Yeah. I have a few questions before we finish. If you meet here an entrepreneur, a young founder that wants to build the next startup in emerging markets here in Morocco or another African country, or I don't know, what's the advice you would give him or her?
So, there's the old Nike saying, just go do it, right? We all know that. So there's a lot to that, okay? However, I would say that if you're trying to build something and you're going to dedicate your life to it for 4 or 5 years before you really know you have a success or not, do a lot of research on the markets you're going to go after, the technology you're going to use, the countries you're going to be doing business in, all the different pillars that I've mentioned, the regulatory and things, and see if on paper at least it looks like this could really work out pretty well. So many people start companies and they hit a brick wall because they have forgotten or ignored the fact that there's regulation, there's a lot of money that's needed, that people's cultures in different countries don't react well to some of the products that they want to create, and so forth. So do the early stage grunt work involved. It will save you a lot of mistakes along the way.
It's interesting because sometimes it's true that we don't think about some very important things, like what's the topic you'll work on or the city where you will live, but it has a lot of impact on your life. You're also involved in mission-based organizations and foundations. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you're doing and why it's important for you?
Yeah, I think it started, my father, his parents had come from Poland. My mother's parents had come from Poland. And there were a lot of people where we settled down. He was the first one to get a college degree and then became a lawyer. And I know my grandparents were very proud of him and his practice. But he did a lot of work for free for Polish people who didn't have a lot of money and who needed, some estate planning, wills, testaments, things like that. And I think he provided that for my siblings and me. I come from a large family of 7 kids, about how you should be giving back when you even are doing pretty well. And he was not a rich man. He gave away an awful lot. But we had that attitude when we were growing up. And so we've been fortunate in our lives to have good lives, as I've mentioned, with my family and my two sons, and a lot of good health in our family, good schooling and education, good jobs for them. So along the way, we've had the time to be able to help out other causes. What's become important to us are children who are, especially children who have health issues and who need some time and attention. So we spend time with that at the Children's Hospital in Palo Alto, the Stanford Hospital. Social justice and the ability to have organic farms and so forth, which we support locally, a large organization in where we live. Yosemite, which is, for recreation, for going out to the mountains and having a break and some relaxation and breathing the air and having a good time, but also sustainability. So you're not leaving, junk behind in your garbage and plastics and that sort of thing. We're teaching visitors to clean up after themselves and having nice repair of our trails so that you can enjoy the world. So we've enjoyed helping out these kinds of organizations. It's been fun for the family. My wife is quite involved. I'm involved to the extent that I can be, and I know our sons, and their wives will continue on.
Yeah. Is there a book that changed something in your life, or that you would recommend for people listening to us?
The Bible. We're reasonably religious, and we practice the teachings. We happen to be Christian, but do unto others as you'd like to have them do unto you, I think, is a practice that we follow. And I think that those teachings are so strong that you just sort of, that become part of your nature. There are many books that I've read over the years. I really enjoy reading when I have time, sometimes on planes when I'm flying and so forth. These days I'm reading, on politics. I'm reading on good governance in companies and in countries. I'm reading about technology, of course, and startups, so I keep current on those kinds of things. I can't say that there's any one single book that stands out as the book that I go to, but I think I try to learn from anything. Every day is a good learning experience for me.
Yeah. Is there something that we didn't talk about, or something that you would like to say before we finish?
The opportunity, some, I guess we've been practicing is that we are in the U.S., we're blessed with being in some very good situations, many of us. And sometimes we take that for granted, and it's always good to travel. I've always enjoyed traveling. My family travels around a lot, and you see other parts of the world, and you understand better about what we have. And other parts of the world have sometimes more happiness, and in some cases they have some problems and some real challenges. But it provides a good balance and a good perspective, and it keeps you honest about your whole life. Because we can be in a world here in the U.S., or not here, but where I am, where, we have a lot of things that are material in nature. And it's important to get more of a perspective. So traveling around a lot in different places, not just luxury places, but really some interesting places to learn about what people do, how they live, how they're bringing up their kids, their families, and so on. Yeah. That's been important to us.
Thank you so much, Steve. It was great meeting you. I learned a lot, and it was my first podcast in English. And
congratulations, you did
well. Thank you so much.
Okay,
I liked it, and thank you for being with us today. It was great. Thank you.
Oh, thanks again, Mohamed. It was a pleasure.
Merci beaucoup d'avoir écouté cet épisode jusqu'au bout. Si vous avez aimé cet épisode, partagez-le autour de vous, abonnez-vous à la chaîne. Et comme vous le savez, on est sur YouTube, mais aussi sur Spotify et Apple Podcasts. Donc partagez Next Wave autour de vous pour nous aider à faire connaître ces podcasts.